where you can send your questions in. And I'll be doing, we'll be doing our intros very soon. We're streaming live already on YouTube now, Geoffrey. That's great.
It is. It's nice to be here, Chitra.
Yeah, it's wonderful to be here. We've been doing these webinars together for some years now.
We have indeed, yeah. And it's always been good. I mean, I think there's always been a very positive feel about both the webinars and the participation and the engagement that we've had from them.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been doing them since 2020. I was looking back at some of our webinars. They're certainly available on the Martinal Residence's site, actually, our older webinars. And a lot of what we said in those webinars are still relevant. We did the webinar together, The Portuguese Miracle.
We did.
Why Portugal will continue to be popular after COVID back in 2020. Yeah. And then we did another one in 2021, Invest, Live, Work in Portugal. I think that was also, well subscribed. And we did that with Miguel Fonch, and Kitty, I think, interviewed us.
That's right, yes. Yeah. I remember well.
Yeah, in 2021. So a bit of a break. Obviously, we've been busy post-COVID. We didn't do one last year, the year before. But it's quite good timing. We've had a lot of registrations, so very good.
Isn't there? A lot of interest.
Yes, there has been. So I think it's fantastic to see all the registrations come through, even this morning. So
we had a bit of a rush, actually. It's like gold rush this morning, didn't we?
Yeah, exactly.
Which was
lots of registrations. Yeah. Some will be catching up later. We will be sending the recording, in the follow-up, because some people are in the Americas, so the time zones difficult. So yes, I'm already getting questions through some of the other channels saying, will it be recorded? Yes. Quite good timing. It is going to be recorded and sent out to people who are registered. And there's a live stream right now. So good. It's 10:01. I'm going to wait for the cue from our team to say that there are, a significant number of people already on board. I'll give maybe 2 more minutes. I see the attendees are increasing as we speak. So
I think the thing obviously to emphasize as well is that we are covering a lot of material today, aren't we, Chitra? So
there's a lot, yes.
So for the bits that we don't cover, because there's obviously only a certain amount of detail that we can go into, we're always available to answer questions, to field those, whether they be through yourself or Edge, and then we can clarify and indeed, if you like, provide further guidance to individuals who are looking at Portugal in a serious way in terms of whether that be investment or relocation or otherwise.
Absolutely. That is, we won't be able to cover all the questions in this webinar or the content. I mean, the great thing is there is so much, so many ways actually still available for residency, and there are a few facts on tax advantages, and Geoffrey will be covering some of those. We'll be having a conversation on them, but it'll be impossible in this one webinar to cover. We will be doing another one in about 3 months, 4 months time, for sure. So, however, we're here to answer your questions. Definitely reach out to Geoffrey and team, or Martinal here, through me or the team. Okay, so 10:03. Shall we get started, Geoffrey?
I think so. I think we're ready to go.
All right. So let me start with an intro to myself. I'm Stern, owner and founder of the Martinal Resorts, as well as the latest branded residences, Martinal Residences, at Martinal Orient in Praxis Nações. That background you see there is actually the Tagus River, Rio Tejo, in the background. And this is, what we've built here, some beautiful apartments at the river. And we're also, my husband and I, the founders also of United Lisbon International School and the United Lisbon Edu Hub. All these details are available on various websites, but we will be posting some information about where you can find out more information. So Roman and I'm originally Singaporean, of Indian origin, and British, and my husband is Swiss German from Zurich, and we moved to Portugal in 2001. So we've been here now nearly 23 years, doing business and living here. We've had 4 children in the meantime, and we continue to in other projects in Portugal. Some of you don't need an intro to Portugal. I mean, it's a beautiful country, a quarter of the size of California, with all year round temperate weather. It's not too cold in the winter and not too hot in the summer. We've got over 900 kilometers of Atlantic coastline. Some people think that the south is on the Mediterranean. No, it's still Atlantic. And then, you got to get past the Rock of Gibraltar to get to the Mediterranean. English is widely spoken. People are wonderful. I did a TEDx talk as well more than 4 years ago now. And many things I say in that are still relevant. So if you search TEDx Chitra Stern, you'll find why Portugal is trending. And a lot of the reasons I say there, still hold true. People are very welcoming here, foreigners. We all learn Portuguese and we speak Portuguese, but people still immediately, it must be my accent, but still immediately say, would you prefer that I spoke in Portuguese, which is so lovely. And when you are speaking Portuguese, they're very encouraging. All I had to say was, bom dia, como está, at the beginning. And they'd say, senhora já fala muito bem português, very encouraging people. And the lifestyle is wonderful here. We have not just the great weather, but we're very well connected to the west and to the east, with the flight times to the American coast, 7 hours, to Dubai 7 hours. So connections to the Middle East and further east are easy, to Africa, South America as well. And it's really the details of the lifestyle as well. I mean, when I tell people that the stores are open in Vasco da Gama shopping till midnight, it's just incredible. You have Lisbon, which is a small city. I mean, it's a European capital of good dimensions. I say it fits the Goldilocks principle. It's just right. It's not too big and it's not too small as a European capital city. So, so much. And I've done talks on other talks as well. So you'll find a lot of information about me if you start searching and videos. So, the lifestyle is great here. And we're here to talk about, an update on the residence programs and the non-habitual residence, the Golden Visa as the primary residence program. Yes, the Golden Visa for real estate did come to an end last year, and the non-habitual residence did too. However, there are details that people may not be aware of with the NHR and Golden Visa generally. So we're here to do an update. And so there are a few different D visas as well. But as Geoffrey will be saying, he'll be introducing all the different residency programs but we only have time in this short webinar to talk about a few. So I'll hand over to Geoffrey without further ado. Geoffrey, please do introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what you're going to be saying.
Thanks very much, Chitra. Well, and delighted to be here. I really appreciate the invitation to have this conversation regarding Portugal, the residences programs in Portugal, the NHR, and the other lifestyle, I suppose, opportunities that are still available here in Portugal. So I'm been living here for just slightly longer than you, Chitra, of 24 years coming up on. We were the early adopters, I think,
That's right.
pre-Brexit, pre-Golden Visa, pre-NHR. So we ostensibly, I think, really moved here for lifestyle reasons, which is, you know, sentiment that very much prevails in the country. In fact, arguably, the lifestyle has improved
Oh,
significantly over the period we've been here.
absolutely.
So I'm a senior partner at Edge International Lawyers. Edge International is a Portuguese law firm, full service, which looks after international clients looking to invest, relocate, um, work in Portugal. So we really cover the A to Z of that guidance, if you like, of the experience of the individual, whether that be a corporate minded individual or more of a private client minded individual, in terms of their company, their tax, their wills and inheritance, their employment issues they may have, their residency issues, their tax issues, etc., and real estate issues. So you can find out more about us on the website, which is will be posted towards the end of this webinar, I believe. And also we have a specialist site which is based on non-habitual residency. I myself am a dual national, British and Irish, and I have a number of positions on a number of different committees. I'm the chair currently of the Ireland Portugal Business Network, which has been very interesting insight into the number of Irish, for example, who are coming to live, work, invest in Portugal. I also sit on the Council of the Portuguese UK Chamber of Commerce, and member of another couple of European organisations which are more charitable in nature, such as Sea Shepherd. So that all brings a different insight as to how Portugal is still very much in the focus internationally, because we are a business which has clients all over the world. Literally, we used to be more, I would say, Eurocentric, but now we really are global in terms of our reach. So it's been very interesting to see the sort of the way that people have been following, if you like, the changes to both the Golden Visa program and also to the NHR program itself, and provide a little bit of demystifying, if you like, as
Yes.
to some of the myths, because there is an awful lot of information out there on the web, but not all of it is reliable. So I think probably without further ado, I should maybe switch now to looking at some of the principal visa programs and residency programs which are available in Portugal.
Let's do that.
Our challenge, I suppose, Chitra, was, again, as you said, was time, in the
Yeah.
sense that when we sat down in preparation for this, we actually worked out that we were possibly going to cover 9 different programs for residency. And I think that therefore, you know, we really have got to focus on 3 of those. But the 9, we will we'll name them. I think it's interesting for participants to hear the variety in the menu. And also they can always reach out to us should they want to have further clarity, or indeed for us to maybe provide a little bit of guidance as to which program would suit their needs best. So first of all, the Golden Visa program, which you've already mentioned, which is investment based, and the difference with the Golden Visa program over and above the D programs is that the application starts here in Portugal. Then we have the D visa, common requirements. I'll go over those in a second. But actually, we have the D1, which is a kind of straightforward employment visa. Then we have what's called the D2, the investment or entrepreneur visa. The D7, which sometimes is called passive income or retirement visa. The D8, which is digital nomad visa. The startup visa, which kind of sits a little bit alone. Then the reunification of the family visas and the expression of interest. So we do actually have quite an interesting menu. What I'm going to focus on initially is the Golden Visa, and then talk a little bit more about the D7 visa together with the digital nomad visa. I,
A quick question for you there, Geoffrey. The people can also just buy a property and move here and apply for residence. Is that like a which category would you put that under?
in principle, yes, but I think that really the residential aspect of the program itself was more focused on the golden visa. So there is a possibility to apply here, live and work, which would be effectively, you'd still need the D7 visa, for example, to effectively show that you actually have some income to support yourself and allow yourself to, I suppose, receive a monthly income together with sufficient funds in order to support yourself. One of the things, however, we should emphasize is that we are talking about visas for third country nationals. So let's not forget that as Europeans, no visa is required. And in
Yes.
fact, for Europeans, it really is a straightforward matter of moving to Portugal and obtaining what's called an EU residency certificate, which is easily obtainable by indeed not only just having a property which is owned in your name, but even a lease contract which is in your name. Now, using that particular certificate, after 5 years, an application can be made for actual nationality, for Portuguese nationality. And therefore, for example, for British citizens, there still are some availability, or there still is some availability for British citizens to apply for what we call the Brexit card under Article 50. So that's something which you should also contact us about if you're listening, and which is also of interest. On the golden visa, I think that it is true the golden visa changed, but the golden visa still survives. So we have effectively 4 different ways in which a golden visa qualifying requirement can be met. One is by making a 500,000 investment in a qualified investment fund. Another is by making a 500,000 investment in research activities. The third option is making a 250,000 investment by way of donation. And finally, it's called the employment qualification, is either by creating 10 jobs or by creating 5 jobs together with equity or participation in equity of 500,000. So already, we are seeing and continuing to see an interest in the golden visa. And obviously, I mean, you'll have seen it as well, Chitra, is the fact that although the actual requirements in terms of the application have more or less stayed the same, what it's in terms of the issuing of the visas, that has gone back to the initial schedule, which was the initial visa is granted for 1 year, and then there were 2 visas after that before being able to apply for nationality of 2 years. But the beauty is the minimum stays. And the minimum stays being 7 days in any 1 year period or 14 days over any 2 year period.
Yes.
And that's really been one of the key attractions, hasn't it, Chitra, of this particular golden visa?
Absolutely. And I think that that's the difference between sort of the D visas and the golden visa. But coming back to the golden visa requirements, I was quite interested actually to hear that this donation to the arts and culture is 250,000 euros. You are seeing that it has actually proven itself. I mean, it sounds like a good sub uh, section, which I don't think people know about actually. A donation of 250,000 to a foundation, is it?
That's right. It has to be a qualifying foundation.
Yeah.
Actually successfully achieved. In fact, we're one of the only law firms in Portugal to have done this via Seralves. And therefore, yes, it certainly is for someone who's looking to make that sort of donation to the arts and culture in
Yes.
particular, who's philanthropic by their nature.
Yes.
I still think it's a very viable option, and so certainly worth exploring.
Fantastic. There are some questions coming. How does the tax work if you're an EU citizen and have obtained your EU residency cert? Do you register as a tax resident if you're earning a certain amount via country versus income from abroad? From Sinead.
Okay, so what should happen here is really quite an important point to emphasize and mention is the fact that in Portugal, obtaining a residency or residency card, receiving your residency card or EU residency certificate, as the case may be, does not automatically make you tax resident. There is a separate requirement, an application that needs to be done in order to apply for tax residency. However, if you have a residency card other than the Golden Visa or indeed an EU residency certificate, you should apply as a tax resident because you're living here and you have moved your centre of life to Portugal. And therefore, the fact that you have your EU residency certificate would mean that you should regularise your position as soon as possible. However, prior to doing so, I'm a big believer, I think we're both big believers in Chitra, look before you leap. So, you need to make sure that you get yourself set up correctly,
Yes.
tax-wise, simply because we have seen so many difficult stories of clients who've been set themselves up without taking advice sometimes, or maybe not taking the right advice, setting themselves up a little bit uncomfortably, or maybe not in exactly the right fashion, and then having to unwind that. So, look, it doesn't have to be from edge. Take professional advice,
Yeah.
the right professional advice, so that you know exactly how you're being set up for tax purposes. So, yeah.
That's great. And there's another question from Peter. Could you comment on the processing delays at IMA, formerly CEF, in processing applications for real estate GVs? As a UK applicant, my application has been pending for 2 years. Also interested in the recent announcement that pending applicants, we wanted to cover this, will have the 5 years start to count from the date of application. In that case, how will the 1 week per year of physical presence in Portugal be evidenced?
Hey, that is true. Let's start with the latter part of the question, Chitra.
Yeah.
I think that is pretty groundbreaking news, very encouraging. It is an approved law, which is yet to be published. So therefore, it has not yet become law. So we're not going to make any assumptions that, in fact, it will become law. But we have a very strong impression that it will. And it will mean, therefore, that residency applications can be made based on the date of the actual application for the residency visa, which would mean, in the circumstances which the question has been raised, yes, the application date which could be utilised is that indeed as a way of proving the 5 years. In terms of evidencing the 7 days or the 14 days, as the case may be, that's something which already you should have been able to had to evidence in the approval process, and therefore I don't think that should be too much difficulty in terms of the golden visa. But yeah, it's a very timely and pertinent question because I think it's extremely encouraging. We do actually have my partner, Anna Thuresh, has actually put out a very interesting short video note on that, which is available on our website. So for those who are interested, they should have a look.
Okay, and the IMA, I mean, the only thing I know is that once it's in there, it will come out. I know there've been some changes, but maybe you can just quickly comment on that before we move to the next question. The transition has happened, at least from CEF to IMA, and actually, I mean, the access is a little bit better in going to Loja de Cidadão, no? To process. Just a quick comment on that, because there are lots of questions coming in, and we do have to have a
on the IMA, yeah, I would say, look, it's too early to say how quickly they are going to react to their new rule, having succeeded CEF. However, what I can say to you is, for example, we had a number of pending applications which were waiting for that approval, and we've actually had them approved in the past few days. So after seeing a little bit of a vacuum in terms of movement, we are actually seeing very encouraging signs for those sort of pre-deadline golden visa applications which were being made actually for the pre-approval to be made. And the encouraging thing is that also what we're tending to see is that when that approval has been made, is that the biometrics are scheduled fairly promptly after that, in the
Yes.
sense that our clients are notified of the date for the biometrics fairly promptly after that. So
After that. So no, that's encouraging. Okay, there are a few more questions. Shall I just talk about the golden visa first? Because the tax residence is, you're going to cover that a bit later, and I'll save some of these questions for that. What are the timelines for the visa under golden visa if we consider that the process begins today? I mean, I think you just said that we don't have indication of exact timelines, but it will be addressed. I mean, I myself have already been to change my address in one of the IMA locations. They're ever so kind. So, that's the nice thing. It's not, as I always say, Portuguese people, once you get to talk to someone, they are very kind. Um, so please continue, and I'll bring back.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think maybe we'll just flip back a little bit to the both the D7 visa and
Yeah.
digital nomad visa. D7 visa is passive income. And one of the things I should say for the D visas is that there are a number of elements which are common to them. The elements being effectively a Portuguese bank account is pretty important, a rental contract as well, and also a health insurance. Now, in terms of the D7 itself, generally speaking, capital of about 12,000 in a Portuguese bank account, together with regular income. And that could be in the form of passive income or retirement income, as the case may be. And the other thing I should say, which is common to the D visas, is initially they're granted for a period of 2 years and then for 3. So not the same level of renewals. In fact, only one renewal, as opposed to the golden visa itself. Then on the startup visa, not the startup visa because that's something which is very bespoke. On the digital nomad visa, it actually has 2 elements. The digital nomad visa umbrellas, first of all, temporary stay, which allows multiple entries over a period of 1 year. And the second is actually the same as the other D visas, if you like, which will then have the same requirements in terms of those generic requirements, which I just mentioned. What is interesting about the digital nomad visa is that the requirements are slightly different. There is a requirement to have an employment or consultancy agreement with an international company and demonstrate that. And then secondly, to have a proof of our average income in the last 3 months of what is now exactly 3,280 euros, 3,280 euros. So because the minimum wage in Portugal has just increased to 820 euros. So those are 2 of the other visas, if you like, or the D visas, which are of particular interest, or which we're focusing on today.
The digital nomad is actually the D8, isn't it?
Right, yes, the D8.
And just to say, the D7 is also the one you recommend if someone is purchasing a property and moving here. The D7 is the one that they would apply for.
It is, yes, because generally what we're seeing for individuals who are moving here is the fact that who are looking to buy a property and have bought a property, is that effectively they will either be retired or indeed they will be in receipt of regular income.
Yes.
And investment income, simply because they're moving here effectively either to, I suppose, early retirement or just as a lifestyle choice, if you like. However, that's generally the one which is most suitable, Chitra, I would say. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Going to some more questions. I mean, there are a couple of people who've talked about that, they have bought a property, they're with you, they've got proof for biometrics, went to CEF Portimao last year, 1 year ago. Now, what is happening? They haven't received the ID card yet, but they've submitted all the documentation and paid. So the IMA, is there a way to follow up and find out the processing time?
we're doing what we can. I mean, certainly
What you
for
can. Yeah.
individual clients who are in those
Yeah.
particular situations, is we are following up regularly with IMA.
That's yeah, I think
Um,
this is the case. But it's there. That's the important thing. I mean, for me,
yeah,
that it's not lost. So it will happen. It will take some time. And yes, we need to have sometimes patience in Portugal. But I understand even in the UK, I have a friend, who's applying for, their son's father, and you don't even get an answer there. So here we know that you're handling it, and that's being processed. So there's another question. Husband is German. The person is British. They bought an apartment in Jan 23, expecting to move next year and to become residents. They're planning to take advantage of the NHR tax scheme. So this was, we're probably now, sort of getting onto this NHR tax. But before we talk about the NHR, I want to talk about a couple of things. But bear this in mind, Geoffrey. We're looking to the option of moving this year and apply for the NHR because they've bought the property before 10th of October 2023.
okay.
They will have to put a rent in place to rent a place in order to move this year. Can you comment on the continued viability of the option for NHR? And indeed, as far as I understand, it is because they bought a property before 10th of October 2023, and the option confirmed, and will it be viable past March elections? As far as we understand, yes, Geoffrey. So quick comment, and then we'll talk about real estate and tourism before we move on to an update on those things before we move on to the NHR.
Yeah, quick comment, I think, Chitra, is in principle, yes, although it doesn't specifically state in the qualification for the transitional provisions that actually owning a property qualifies. It does say that actually having possession of a property before the 10th of October 2023 would qualify. So I think you should contact us, and I think effectively we can run that through with you. But we do know that we have a number of clients who are relying on that as an application process for applying for the NHR in 2024.
Right. So there are still more questions coming in. I mean, this is the great thing about the webinar, but what I'm going to do just to, Geoffrey, we spoke about this before we get on. Are you finished with the D7 and
no,
the diploma?
It'd be great if you could give some insights, I think, on the real estate and
Sure.
tourism, Chief.
And tourism. So, I mean, we've had a fantastic, well, from our perspective, last year we finally opened Martinial residences. We've sold over 90% of the available properties, and we've got 13 apartments left. So that is an indication. I know it took a little bit longer to actually open and get the deeds done. Very open and honest about it. They were a tough couple of years, between 2019 when we started construction and, when COVID happened, we faced some delays, and then, the war started in the Ukraine, and, there's a huge supply chain disruption. I mean, we know the story. Sometimes we forget, but we finished the construction and we opened last year and went through the deeds. And what I can say is that all our owners on site, we live on site as well. We put our money where our mouth is. And all the owners here whom I meet, in the restaurant or in the bar lounge that we've created, people are very happy. So, I'm proud to say that. And, in Portuguese, we say, you put your hands in the fire, and, we're doing that. As Mãos na Fogo means you put your money where your mouth is. And I would say, yes, we know that there is bureaucracy. People talk about that, but I would say in the nearly it'll be 23 years that we've been here in this country. In the last two decades and almost half, things have gotten better. Bureaucracy has become simpler. There are people to talk to. You can actually, things have changed. It's been transformational time, actually, the last 2 decades. And between Geoffrey and I, we were laughing about it. We have nearly a half a century of life and work experience in
Yeah.
Portugal.
Yeah.
So tourism, absolutely has been increasing. I know we personally faced that. We have 4 hotels in Portugal, and we faced some tough times during COVID, and but what I can say is tourism has come back in great ways, and actually, we're surpassing 2019 figures in Portugal. In terms of room nights, and actually, what is encouraging to see is that tourism is spreading into the north, into the interior. Turismo de Portugal has done a great job, and we can be very proud to say that tourism isn't just concentrated in Lisbon or Porto or the Algarve. It's happening all over the country. So very positive. And I can share some figures from our school. We also founded the United Lisbon International School in 2020. A tough time to start a school, Geoffrey. September. We started with around 80 students, and today we have 615 students. We've grown rapidly, and the school community has over 55 nationalities as well, very international. I think in our building we have over 30 nationalities who've bought, so very international place that we live in, very cosmopolitan. And I would say, so much has happened also in terms of new restaurants opening. And, we live in Practice Nações, which has seen so many new restaurants opening, and just walking around it, we're a perfect 15-minute city. You see, Chinese restaurants, there's Middle Eastern stuff, and, there's a lot of action happening, and, it's wonderful to see. We're close to Marvilla, which is actually officially where the school is. And Marvilla district is really getting lots of interesting, things in the art scene. Speaking about art and culture, that is one of the areas Portugal wants to encourage growth in, which is why the Golden Visa is still available there. But a small note that the Golden Visa is also still available via the fund method. I have friends who have a management company with approved funds you can invest in. It's not available for the real estate way anymore, as far as I understand it. But people are investing in various other businesses, which is really encouraging. So that's a quick update, Geoffrey. So do you want to start talking about the NHR, and then I'm going to field some questions for you?
Yeah, no, great. I think it's a really interesting insight, because I think, whilst Portugal can, investment here can, it's like any other country. There are going to be challenges there, but at the end of the day, I think that any rewards are, certainly well worth that investment from the initial from the start. And speaking of rewards, tax rewards on the NHR. I think tax rewards for the NHR. Let me give you a quick overview of the NHR program. I think for those folks listening, we did experience a bit of a rush at the end of last year of individuals who are trying to register before the official bringing to an end of the NHR program itself. Let me emphasize, however, that there are transitional provisions in play for 2024. But first of all, NHR is extremely interesting, beneficial tax program. Doesn't mean that all of your foreign income is going to be exempt, or indeed all income which is generated nationally will benefit from a flat rate of tax of 20%. But what it does mean is that qualifying foreign income will be exempt in the form of dividends, royalties, and interest, provided they fulfill certain conditions. Pension income, there's a flat rate of tax of 10%. And on certain salary and consulting income, there is also a potential exemption on the basis that either an exemption or the application of a rate of 20% on the basis that the individual is exercising a high added value activity. There is a list for those high added value activities, so if you need to have a look at them, we're happy to send it. So really very, very attractive package. We saw Chitra, a lot of people move to Portugal because
Yes.
of the program. And look, it's a program which sits amongst other programs in Europe and internationally. So there is a new program which we've sort of called the incentivized tax status, which is now in play. But I think it's important for those people listening to understand that actually you may still be able to qualify for the non-habitual residency program. Uh,
Yes.
and one of those requirements we've already covered, which is owning a property. Also, a lease, I saw one of the questions there, which was asking whether, in fact, a lease agreement would qualify for the purposes of the transitional provisions. Yes, it would, provided that it was signed before the 10th of October of 2023. Interestingly, also a contract of employment entered into before the 10th of October, sorry, the 31st of December 2023. And that would include also a promise of an employment contract. Now, which we find interesting when we were discussing this beforehand, Chitra, the reservation contract or promissory contract entered into before the 10th of October 2023 as well would qualify. And then finally, actually a residence visa, holding a valid residence visa as at the 31st of December of 2023, or indeed having a residency process in action. So that, in my view, and from what we're seeing,
Fantastic.
it's still a lot of people out there, Chitra, who are going to be qualifying.
Qualifying, and they should process their NHR. They should get going this year. So, quick question: by changing tax residence to Portugal in 2023, from Shane, am I subject then to tax for the interest income of the past year, irrespective of whether I changed in January or December 2023?
Okay, that really you have a choice if you register as a tax resident in a given year. So your first choice is actually to declare and be taxable on your worldwide income from the date on which you registered as a tax resident to the 31st of December, tax year being the same as a calendar year, or you can declare for the entire year. So most of our clients would tend to declare only for the point at which they've become tax resident onwards. So I hope that answers the question.
Okay, and if a spouse has an EU passport, can their UK partner move to Portugal without a visa?
Still need a visa, but it's a different type of visa. It's a reunification of the family visa, which I mentioned very, very briefly at the beginning.
So that's great. Then there's, if I have a passport, a main residency, but want to understand if the NHR is still open, you just said you said it is because they have a residency, right? The 0% tax on dividends still applies, question mark.
Okay, the 0% rate on dividends would apply for NHRs.
Yes.
For non-NHRs, it's 28%.
So they need to apply for this NHR. That was the same person. So then there is, for a student who entered Portugal in 2022, my studies added, so the time, I'm guessing, to the road for the PR or citizenship.
Good question. You see, this is because the student visa, I mean, it is a visa as well. It's another type of visa. So potentially, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Get further.
This is under the new law. This is under the new law. But if you already have the visa, the time should count anyway.
They should get advice, obviously.
Definitely, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then I've received my residency card by Golden Visa Investment Property. Is it possible to sell my property and reinvest in another property without disrupting my Golden Visa? If yes, what are the regulations around reinvestment?
Okay. What's unclear from the question is at which stage they've received their investment, their residency card. I'm presuming it's after the first application. If it is after the first application, yes, it is possible to change investment, but we don't necessarily recommend it.
Recommend it until the five years are over, and you, I mean, right? Especially if you're applying for citizenship.
Yes.
Okay. Then what is the minimum residency requirement in Portugal on the D7 visa?
Actually, that's a good question. It was something I was going to come back to,
Yes.
which is that it tends to be a little bit more strict under the D visas in terms of what the minimum stays are. So generally speaking, under the minimum stays, effectively on any 2-year period, for example, in which the visa is granted, you're allowed to be away for 8 months, but no more than 6 months sequentially. As a result, if you're looking at a 2-year period, 16 months residence in Portugal, there is an exception to this, however, and the exception being that if there are valid health or work reasons for you having absences over and above this period, then they can be asked, provided, and accepted by AMA, or IMA as it is now. And so generally speaking, what we find is that clients who are using these permitted absences, fairly straightforward declaration from the company has been acceptable when the immigration authorities have actually asked. But I think the thing to emphasize is the presumption about the D visas is that the individual is coming here to live. So it is certainly more restrictive than the golden visa, and therefore we do, for those who are maybe everything has to be bespoke to individual circumstances, and therefore sometimes what we find is clients will then flip back and look at the golden visa again.
Another question on the D8 visa, can you renew this after the 1 year? And then if you choose to become permanent resident, what is the next type of visa to get? The D8 is the digital nomad.
Very technical question, that. However, what I would say is that on the first year, the presumption is that it's a multiple entry visa, effectively. So that has to be taken into consideration. The presumption is you're not becoming a resident here. In terms of the switching of those two visas between actually the normal multiple entry or the initial multiple entry visa into the 5-year residency program, yes, it should be possible to transition, but we need to look at that carefully.
I suppose some people want to do that. They want to get a feel first.
Sure.
And then perhaps buy a property and then, Okay, so if you're looking to buy an existing company, is this also D7?
Potentially. I mean, you have also the company option, which is under the D2, which is actually the setup of your own company. And share capital requirements, minimums tend to be quite generous. And in terms of the other requirements, they are to pay yourself as director a minimum salary, or above, or 820 euros per month. The other option would be the golden visa, actually.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
If you're
that still exists.
Yeah, exactly. Provided you also supply or create, I should say, an additional 5 employment posts.
Plus 500,000 in equity.
500,000 in equity, yeah. That's right.
Okay, so I sent in my digital nomad visa application, D8 application, in December 2023. Would I still qualify for the NHR in 2024?
Oh, that's like an exam question.
Yeah.
So effectively, again, it's a temporary visa. However, what specifically the legislation says in terms of the transitional provisions, it states that has started a process on or before the 31st of December 23 for the granting of a residency visa, specifically through requesting an appointment or effective appointment for the submission of the request for the granting of a residency visa. Sounds a bit repetitive, I know, or residency title, or even through the application for the granting of a residency visa or residency title. Now, that is very much legal speak there, typical legislation, but I think the important thing to emphasize is evidencing an application through evidencing that the application has actually been made for the granting of a residency visa or residency title. So on the basis of that because the application has been made for, even it is a digital nomad visa, arguably less, but we need to look at that.
Need to look at that. I mean, yeah. Wow, this is amazing. I mean, what a webinar. I tell you, we had 98 participants live. We had 165 registrations. At one point we had 98 participants. I mean, this is really very exciting for me. And I think I'll have to rewatch the video for all the technical answers you've given for these technical questions. It's amazing, Geoffrey. So I'm a UK resident and I have owned a domestic property in Portugal for 20 years. Most recent purchase in Jan 2015. Would this give qualification for NHR after approval of D7 or D8 visa?
Another exam question. Yeah, I mean, arguably, again, because I think if you're using the basis of actually having possession of a property as qualifying or benefiting under the transitional provisions, yes. So we would need to look at that. And indeed, that's something which we would be doing. We'd be making an application on that basis. You have a property, or the individual has a property which they are possessing, which they have the ability to occupy, or have possession of. So
have possession of,
yes.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, one thing that's really interesting for me is this webinar. I mean, there are really engaged people. People are really looking into this topic of how to move to Portugal, and that's exciting for me. I'm a big proponent of FDI into Portugal. I served on a task force for 3 years. That was my pro bono work for 3 years. Portugal working alongside other ministries. To see how we could further encourage foreign direct investment. And, this is amazing to see, really, Geoffrey. So I'm a citizen by Golden Visa, and I am a non-tax resident. What is the difference from NHR, and how can I prove that I do not live in Portugal more than 180 days a year?
Okay. Well, difference from NHR is that NHR is not a residency visa. It's a tax program. So the NHR doesn't grant any residency rights per se. So a residency, so the golden visa, fine if you are staying below the 183 days within Portugal. If you are creeping close to those 183 days, then you need to be a little bit careful. Obviously, there's always the backup plan that you will have in those circumstances whereby you can show a tax residency in another country. Where you are lodging tax returns and submitting, and actually are able to produce a piece of paper or electronic document which shows you're a tax resident there. But if you are looking to kind of navigate your days in Portugal based on remaining non-tax resident, that's something which you would need to speak to us about to do that safely, should we say.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Someone has asked, is the NHR still operational for new expats in 2024? I've just bought a new property in Porto, and they've asked, about, so I'm assuming the new property has happened after 23rd of, after October.
Yeah.
So how do they qualify for an NHR? It's not possible.
Not possible.
Yeah.
So
okay, that's unfortunate. Yeah. So I mean, just to say, the NHR has been in operation since
2009.
2009. So there's ample time. We've promoted the NHR, so it's a pity that has come to an end. But there was a lot of time, that people could have done this. But okay, there's still other ways.
There are other ways, Chitra. I mean, again,
other ways, yeah.
We kind of flip back to, our own experience.
Yeah.
Is the fact, and maybe one of the things that we should emphasize is the fact that what we do see, I mean, this is over and above even the NHR applications. We were always looking at people relocating to Portugal or looking to relocate to Portugal for effectively inheritance planning. There's no inheritance tax for...
No inheritance tax in Portugal, yes.
So there's no wealth tax. That's for close family, for spouse, ascendants, and descendants. There's no wealth tax. Also, inheritance tax is territorial only. So Portugal isn't interested in any wealth outside the country itself. And Portugal does not tax capital. So these are very important points to remember. And also, even on things like dividend income, is arguably a attractive rate of tax of 28% flat rate, and also the possibility of being able to structure wealth in a way, for example, through insurance bonds, which would bring down your overall rate of tax on withdrawals either to 22.4% or 11.2%. So, provided you've held it for 8 years.
So
So,
we're going to definitely do a webinar on that in a couple of
yeah,
months, I'm sure.
yeah.
I hear about that quite often. Now, we've answered 19 questions. There are 10 left, and I'm going to quickly see whether we can whiz through some more.
I have to say,
Jeffrey?
you've been amazing at moderating these questions, Chitra.
Oh, no, well, you have the difficult job. I have the easy one. So if you become NHR as a British citizen, how are you taxed on capital gains? Do you pay in the UK or in Portugal, and what's the rate?
Depends on the capital gains. So if it's on real estate, generally speaking, it should be under the Portuguese UK double taxation agreement. Those capital gains are only payable in the UK. If it's on investments, then will be 28% in Portugal, but you'll always be utilizing the tax credit as between, which is an operation with the double taxation agreement. But just be careful. One has to be careful about where those capital gains tax on investments are paid. What we generally find is it's better for clients to pay the capital gains in Portugal and then seek the credit in the other country, as the case may be. But actually, I mean, if presuming in this case that the individual has extricated themselves from UK tax residency, that shouldn't really be an issue about declaring the capital gains tax in the UK at all.
Okay. So is during transition year is it still required to apply for the NHR before 31st of March 2024?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
That's
the 1st of December.
That's good. Then thank you for answering. So that's the lease question. Thank you for answering my question. In other words, if a lease agreement that begins in February 2024, it would no longer apply for NHR 2024. That is correct. Yeah. Then planning to go for the D7 visa, can passive income actually come from the income of my day job?
Potentially, yes.
Potentially.
I know it sounds a bit counterintuitive, but yes.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. With regards to the NHR, it is unclear information misleading with regards to timelines for NHR applications. Well, I think we've covered quite a lot about that. Basically, those categories, if you've done certain things before October 23 or December 23, you can apply for the NHR this year, right? So if you qualify for NHR, can you apply after 1st of April 2024 to have 10 years from 2024? Yes. Then there's with NHR, does the 20% flat rate for the high value added activity apply for Portugal employment activity? What about employment activity outside of Portugal? Is that exempt in Portugal if we pay tax in the jurisdiction in which the employment activity is carried out?
Okay, yes, salary. In principle, yes. If tax is paid in the origin country, then salary income is exempt. Also, there's a potential of exploring how consultancy income in the exercise of a high added value activity, where that activity is at least partly exercised in an office, in a physical office, in the other country, whether that be the UK or US or elsewhere, then there's a potential to explore whether that can be exempt too, which is quite an attractive package.
And the first part was yes, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Geoffrey mentioned that having a residential process in place still keeps the NHR application open in 2024. Does that mean that for an EU citizen, you can still apply for NHR in 2024?
As an EU citizen, if you have your EU residency certificate, yes.
You have to have an EU residency certificate before 31st of December?
That's right, yes. They're before 31st December, Chitra. That's right.
Okay. So I'm learning something, you see. So if I work remotely for a UK company and wish to work remotely from Portugal with the D8 digital nomad visa, is the tax due on my UK income paid in the UK or in Portugal?
Be paid in the UK, because if you're doing it on the temporary visa, it's just allowing you multiple entries into Portugal.
Right. Can you explain more about the funds that are approved for obtaining the golden visa? My understanding is that this is very unclear. What about direct investment in a Portuguese firm? How to know if the firm qualifies? I mean, as far as I understand, the fund, so there's an investment, there's a management company that has started a fund which which has been approved, correct?
Yeah, they're called approved collective investment funds, and
Yeah.
I have to say I've been sort of a little bit surprised at maybe how maybe it's because there's not as much definition as we would like from a legislation perspective, but I would say it's only a matter of time before there are more providers who enter the market for these particular funds, even the setup of the funds, because there are already a large number of collective investment funds in Portugal, and I would say that certainly a 500,000 investment whereby you're actually there's not going to be any guaranteed income, but there's also but certainly a potential for actually generating an income together with a residence permit is a pretty attractive package in my view.
Yeah, I mean, I have a friend who is in private equity, and the management company is called August One, and they have some approved funds. I mean, they're on Atlantic Two, I think, or something. So they are. You have to find these funds, and if anyone needs an introduction to Samir, let me know. But there are other funds too. But it's an approved collective investment fund. That's what you're looking
That's right.
for.
Yeah.
So, as NHR, how is the capital gain from selling shares of a company in Singapore taxed?
Okay, as an NHR, effectively, capital gains tax on shares would be charged taxed at 28%, because
Shares.
it's not qualifying income.
Okay. If someone has applied under Article 88.2, this is very technical, definitely exam question, employment route through Manifesto Sound Interest, expression of interest, in 2021, and still waiting for temporary residence card, citizenship time of 5 years will count from 2021 or after getting residency.
The date of the application, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But hold our horses
sorry.
here, and perhaps what we can do is when we do, a follow up to this webinar, and indeed we'll be hoping that we can circulate a fact sheet based on what we've discussed, Chitra.
Yes.
Hopefully we'll have some maybe good news about the approval of that. Well, not approval, publication of that.
Yes.
Law. Yeah. So.
Okay, that's good. So we'll circulate that. I'm conscious it's 11:01, but there are a few more questions that have come in. Let's answer them.
Are people still with us, Chitra?
There are 82 participants still with us.
Wow, we must.
Amazing.
Yeah. Okay.
It's good. So with NHR, what is the treatment of dividend and interest, which is subject to 0% tax in Hong Kong?
Okay.
Which is a tax haven, but it has double tax. It has a DTT. So
exempt. Our experience has been, and I'd say in early years of the NHR was a bit tricky dealing with double taxation. Sorry, tax havens which had a double taxation agreement. However, that should really have been smoothed out now, so those should be exempt interest and dividends from Hong Kong.
Okay. If one is working as a freelance consultant paid overseas, but residency is in PT, Portugal, is it correct that tax on that salary must be paid in Portugal, even if the funds are deposited overseas?
Even if the water, sorry,
the funds, if the income, I'm guessing, is being deposited overseas.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, this is whether they're actually receiving their salary in an overseas.
Receiving the salary, here. It's paid overseas.
Yeah, it's worldwide income. It doesn't matter where the income is received. And in fact, there's a requirement in the tax return to declare the IBANs of the accounts of which an individual is the beneficiary. So, however, in those circumstances, there are two potentials scenarios. One is a 20% rate or an exemption.
20% rate or exemption. Okay, but they need to get further advice on that.
Yes.
Okay, gosh, well, there are no more questions, no open questions, but this is amazing. That was a quick round, and I'm, powered up. So,
And Chitra, sorry to interrupt, but we didn't even talk about healthcare.
oh my goodness, yes. So, healthcare. I mean, one of the reasons people are moving here, private healthcare is extremely affordable. There's also the local NHS, the SNS. You know, where you go into public hospitals when there's something wrong. But what I have found is private healthcare. The good private hospitals everywhere in Lisbon certainly. And COOF is one of the brands. Is Hospital de Luz, Lusíadas, and private healthcare here is extremely affordable compared to many other places. So, this is one of the reasons. And, you mentioned education briefly. There's a big number of international schools. And, what I'm seeing in our in United Lisbon, which is actually part of the Duke's Education Group now. We're part of that. We brought the Duke's Education Group on board with us. And so we're part of this huge network of schools, primarily in the UK, but they're expanding in Europe. This is another reason why people are moving here, the access to international education. And what can I say? We've been here, both of us, each of us, for nearly a quarter of a century each, and we're still here. We're still, we continue to invest here, and my children, two of them are studying abroad now, but definitely they want to come back, at some point. So this is the quality of life is very good here. Safety, security, people. And I often say, we are human beings. We're not robots. Some people, of course, move for just tax reasons, but people want to invest in a place where they're appreciated and welcome. We are human beings, not robots, and it matters. So the people of Portugal, thank you very much for receiving us. It's wonderful. So a couple of more questions have popped up. Geoffrey, if you'd like to say a few more words, and then I'll
Sure.
let's answer the questions. We're here for some more minutes. So planning to move via the D8 visa, 2-year residence option. If my country has a double taxation agreement with Portugal, how would my tax payment work? My income will be deposited in my country of employment.
Okay, on the basis that you're actually living here and need to register as a tax resident, you'll have to pay your tax here. But actually, what's here? Yes, so we need to look at that to see, because one of the other things I didn't cover, which is maybe slightly outside the scope now, is the new incentivized tax status. So which is a new tax program, very high level potential rate for 20% tax, provided you have a PhD or you're actually taking up a position within a qualifying Portuguese institution. And in those circumstances, it would actually, all passive income would also be tax free. And then there's a 50% exemption on up to 250,000 of income as well, which is actually under the old Return to Portugal program, and which has now been opened up not just to Portuguese but to everybody else. And that would be on the basis that the application was made before 2026, and also that they've not been resident, individual have not been resident in the previous 5 years. And that would apply to certain professional income, which would include consulting income. So maybe for this individual, it might be worth having a further explore around that to see if that would be applicable, and if so, that could be quite a nice package.
Fantastic. Well, there are lots of thank yous there. Thank you all for participating. Are there any closing words, Geoffrey?
I think just to say that notwithstanding what's happened regarding the Golden Visa and the NHR program, Chitra, I mean, we both know that Portugal is still very much open for business. It's still a welcoming country for individuals, international people who are looking to relocate here. I actually think the transition is, particularly for those, for example, who are moving from the Middle East, That's just one example, but also from the US, all over the world, they tend to find that Portugal is a soft landing, whatever stage of life they're at. And if they don't want a soft landing, equally there are business opportunities, and you're the perfect example of that, Chitra, in terms of the business opportunities which are available. In this country, and you yourself as an amazing entrepreneur, have invested, in real estate, both in the Algarve and Lisbon, invested in the school, and have, big plans for that. So you've actually, covered two sectors, both real estate, no, three. Let's call it real estate, tourism, and education.
That's true. Yes.
So,
And different kinds of real estate. I mean, we're currently working on the education hub, EduHub as we call it, sort of an ecosystem for education. And I can only recommend it, come and start a business here. We didn't delve into this starting a business, golden visa. That is very much, I know you spoke very briefly, but it's still very much there, isn't it? And a startup visa. So, thank you for saying those things. I mean, I'll admit you need patience, but things have been getting better over the last 2 decades,
yes,
right?
sure.
Sorry to interrupt. You were,
No, not at all, not at all, Chitra. That was it. That's all. Those were effectively my closing words, and I want to thank you again for the invitation.
Oh no, my great pleasure. I love doing webinars with you. You're such a great professional, and I think today, I mean, within the space of an hour, we've answered several questions. There are lots of thank yous still coming in. Yes, the recording will be available. If you've registered, you'll be receiving a follow-up with the recording, and we have live streamed it on YouTube. So, it will also be available on YouTube, but you'll get all the links, and we'll do a follow-up. And really, there's some great compliments coming through here. So yes, is there a professional business school in Lisbon? I'd love to move there and teach. Yes, there's the Nova School of Business, there's the Católica Business School, there's ISEG, ISHTE. I mean, there's so many, for you just have to apply to them. So wonderful, Geoffrey. Thank you so much for agreeing to participate. I think it's been a fantastic webinar. I think we've shared the websites of many, but when we do the follow-up, we'll definitely share all the websites and continue to engage. I so believe in foreign direct investment in Portugal, and please do come here. Thank you very much for all the participants who are still here, and for the participants who were here earlier, and those who will be listening to the live stream after, to the recording after. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.